Welcome to the Rumi Forum, and a thank you to Erkan and others who have provided us with the hospitality that we've shared and this beautiful new space for us to be gathered in. Today we have a special opportunity to hear from Dr. Ian Markham, who's going to give us a brief talk on, I'll try to pronounce the name properly, Bediüzzaman Said Nursi. I am the Reverend Dr. Carol Flett. I'm the Interfaith Programs Coordinator at the Washington National Cathedral, where I coordinate interfaith dialogues, primarily Abrahamic dialogues, between Jewish, Christian, and Muslim scholars, as well as other grassroots dialogues as well. And I have a particular interest in the Christian-Muslim dialogue and Christian-Muslim relationships, and so I'm delighted to be here as well and to learn from Dr. Markham. Dr. Markham is currently serving as Dean and President of the Virginia Theological Seminary in Alexandria, Virginia, and as Priest Associate at St. Paul's Church in Alexandria. Prior to Dean Markham's appointment in 2007, he served as Dean and Professor of Theology and Ethics at Hartford Seminary in Connecticut, and as Visiting Professor of Globalization, Ethics, and Islam at Leeds Metropolitan University in the United Kingdom. Dr. Markham has written 2 books on Said Nursi. The first was an edited collection titled Globalization, Ethics, and Islam, and the second is forthcoming in its final piece of publication. The title of that is Engaging with Bediüzzaman Said Nursi, a Model for Interfaith Dialogue. So I'm looking forward to learning more about Said Nursi and his ways that we can perhaps improve and change the ways that we carry out interfaith dialogue from his learnings. Welcome, Dr. Markham.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the warm welcome to be here. I'm delighted to be here. Just a few words about how I established this interest in Bediüzzaman Said Nursi. I am an Episcopal priest, a Christian, and I had the privilege of serving for 6 years at Hartford Seminary as their academic dean. Hartford Seminary is quite an interesting seminary. It's actually in the student body 1/3 Muslim, and probably the only place in the United States with such a high percentage in theological education of Muslims. And many of these Muslims actually came from the Noor community, and that was actually where my interest. Turkish Islam, I'm especially interested in non-Middle Eastern forms of Islam. I mean, I think when we think about Islam, too often we get sort of preoccupied with the Arab world and with the Middle East, and we ignore the fact that Indonesia, for example, is the largest and most populated Muslim country in the world by far, and put Indonesia with, say, Indian Islam or Chinese Islam, then you have more Muslims in those 3 countries than you will find throughout the Middle East. Turkish Islam is, I think, especially interesting for Christians in the West, because what you have in Turkey is a country which is had to adapt to its changing status in the world. It was on the losing side of the First World War. The Ottoman Empire was then dismantled, and with it, the trauma of all that as a country came to terms with what was happening. You had the emergence of Ataturk, an aggressively secular state grew and developed, a remarkable state which wanted to engage with westernization and democracy and modern forms of industrialization, so it went through a period of enormous upheaval. And Said Nursi was a key conversation partner in all this, and therefore I think for Christians, especially working in the West, it is a very, very interesting conversation partner. You will find on your seat a summary of what I'm going to say. So let me just speak for about 20-25 minutes, and then we can discuss and bring your expertise and thoughts, because I'm very sure, not least, our host knows a great deal about Bediüzzaman Said Nursi and will be able to share his reflections. I'm sure others will as well. Bediüzzaman Said Nursi, Bediüzzaman simply means wonder of the age. He was born in 1877 and died in 1960. So, as I've already noted, he lived towards the tail end of the Ottoman Empire, as the Ottoman Empire was dismantled. He lived through the First World War. He fought during the First World War. And it was during that, I think, his horror and fear of war very much shaped his faith and understanding. He also was a key conversation partner for Ataturk, and initially was inclined to be sympathetic to the project that Ataturk embarked upon, and then became more suspicious of it. And it became suspicious of it because he saw in the ruling elite a real antagonism to Islam, which worried him. And he wanted to illustrate that you can be a faithful Muslim and live in a secular state. You can be a faithful Muslim and support modernity. You can be a faithful Muslim and find ways of dealing constructively with the West and with issues of diversity within and pluralism within Turkey. So I find his writings fascinating. The primary source is the risale-i, all of which has now been translated into English. Runs to 4 volumes, which this is the words I have here, and I think you can find, as you can with everything these days, it all on the internet somewhere. And what was interesting for Nursi is I think he was one of the foremost theorists in Turkey, committed, devout, observant Muslim theorist who saw that the attachment between Islam and the state can be appropriately challenged. And he talks about that himself as the shift from the old Sayyid to the new Sayyid. A crucial moment was the journey in April 1923, when he decided that the issue for Muslims in Turkey was less to worry about the caliphate and the relationship of Turkey at a national or state level, and worry much, much more about piety, a love of God, submitting your life to God, living as if God really is, appreciating the coherence and elegance of Islam, loving the Quran. And this, in other words, it became a sort of renewal movement, which was going to start less at the state level and much, much more where people were and the challenges they have in their life. And he's a beautiful mixture of a completely traditional Sunni Islamic thinker with Sufism, with a real grasp of contemporary Islamic Muslim dynamics. So I'm going to identify 4 key themes of his thought, and it's difficult to be selective because he touches on everything. I mean, what's interesting about the risale-i, it's almost a sort of thematic commentary on the Quran, and it brings together in beautiful ways around certain themes, the key texts, and then reflects upon them. And I think the first thing one sees in Sayyid Nursi is a commitment to being rooted. He is not, whenever I'm involved in interfaith dialogues or whenever I'm talking to Christians, they keep asking me about when are we going to find liberal versions of Islam. You know, Sam Harris in that dreadful book, The End of Religion, or whatever it's called. Harris muses on, you know, the only hope for Islam is Islam needs to get to a place where it doesn't believe Islam anymore. Well, that's not where Nursi is. Nursi is a person who actually thinks the Quran is true, that Muhammad is indeed the final prophet, that he's completely observant, committed, rooted, in place Muslim. In fact, his initial, the 10th word, as it became known, was a tract on the resurrection, defending the concept of the resurrection for the elite. And it's a very interesting illustration of, basically the heart of the argument is that you can't make sense of life in all its complexity without locating it in the context of both belief of God and a life hereafter. And he constantly illustrates how your understanding of living and being will be incomplete until you recognize this bigger picture, this larger canvas. And he uses story and illustrations to develop that theme. And that was his first argument, proofs for the hereafter, proofs for the resurrection.